Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a world full of assumptions. Women are often placed in neat little boxes. She wants flowers, compliments, someone to open the door for her. But when we strip away the clichés, the Instagram quotes, and the social conditioning, we start to see something deeper, something more human. What women truly crave emotionally isn't found in grand gestures or textbook romance. It's found in emotional safety. In a world that often tells women to shrink, to soften, to endure, what she longs for is the space to expand, to be fully seen without being judged, to be fully expressed without being dismissed. Women crave emotional attunement, not just someone who hears her words, but someone who listens for what she doesn't say. A partner who notices when her energy shifts, who doesn't just ask, "Are you okay?" out of obligation, but who waits patiently for the truth to surface. She doesn't want perfection, she wants presence. She wants a connection that doesn't flinch when she's vulnerable, messy, or unsure. That moment when her guard drops and she lets her truth spill out, will you meet her there? That's what matters. Women crave reliability, not just in actions, but in energy. Someone whose emotions don't disappear when hers intensify. Someone who doesn't shame her for her depth, her passion, or her fears. She doesn't want to be rescued. She wants to be respected, not adored for being an idea, but cherished for being real, for her strength, her softness, and the way she carries it all with silent grace. What women crave is not fantasy, it's radical honesty. It's the kind of emotional intimacy that doesn't get filtered through ego or fear. It's being met by someone who values her truth as much as his own. Because love isn't about impressing her, it's about understanding her, and when she feels understood, not just heard, but felt, everything changes. Women crave emotional safety, a space where they can breathe without performing, without shrinking themselves to be more palatable. In a world that often demands that women be everything, strong yet submissive, independent yet accommodating, emotional safety becomes the sanctuary they seek. It's not about grand declarations of love or constant reassurances. It's about the subtle, steady signals that say, "You're safe here." Safe to feel, to speak, to cry, to question, to be silent. Emotional safety is created through presence, not performance, through consistency, not control. It is the felt sense that someone won't punish you for your vulnerability or weaponize your truth against you later. It's when a woman doesn't have to second guess her emotions or translate her feelings into something more digestible just to be understood. It's when she doesn't fear being called too much, too sensitive, or too emotional simply for expressing herself. Emotional safety is when she knows she won't be dismissed, belittled, or gaslit. It's the foundation for trust, for intimacy, for letting her guard down. When emotional safety is missing, connection becomes shallow and transactional. But when it's present, something remarkable happens. Her real self starts to emerge. Not the curated version she shows to the world, but the deeper version that's raw, layered, and alive. She starts to speak more openly, love more freely, and exist more authentically. Emotional safety isn't about always agreeing with her or never making mistakes. It's about creating a consistent emotional environment where she doesn't feel like she has to wear armor. It's about being emotionally available without being overbearing. It's about allowing her to be human, not just idealized. When emotional safety exists, she doesn't have to constantly monitor the temperature of the relationship to protect herself. To be seen and heard without judgment is one of the deepest emotional longings a woman can have. It's not about being acknowledged on a surface level. It's about someone being truly present, someone who doesn't just hear her voice but actually listens with intention and care. It's when her emotions are not seen as inconvenient, dramatic, or excessive, but as honest reflections of her inner world. It's when her silence isn't ignored and her words aren't rushed past. Being seen means having her pain, her joy, her contradictions, and her complexities recognized without being minimized or fixed. It means holding space for her when she's not at her best and still choosing to stay engaged, not withdraw. It's when she's allowed to feel deeply without being labeled as unstable, when her strength isn't used as a reason to deny her support, and her softness isn't mistaken for weakness. To be heard without judgment is to feel safe enough to speak her truth, to share her thoughts without fear that they'll be twisted, mocked, or disregarded. It's about listening with curiosity, not correction. It's about understanding the emotion beneath the words, the history behind the reaction, the vulnerability wrapped inside the anger or silence. Women are often conditioned to make others comfortable first, to tone themselves down in order to be accepted. But what they crave is the freedom to be fully expressed and still be embraced, not to be analyzed, but to be understood, not to be tamed, but to be valued as they are. When a woman feels seen in this way, she doesn't need to over-explain or prove herself. She knows she is emotionally held, and in that space, she begins to open up in ways that aren't possible in environments where judgment lurks behind every response. Presence and consistency are often underestimated, but they hold more emotional weight than any grand gesture or perfectly chosen words. For a woman, feeling emotionally secure isn't about hearing the right thing once. It's about experiencing the same emotional tone again and again over time. Presence is not just physical closeness, it's being mentally and emotionally available. It's when someone puts down their phone, silences distractions, and truly shows up in the moment with her. It's eye contact that doesn't wander, a tone of voice that holds calmness even in tension, and an energy that doesn't disappear when things get complicated. When a woman feels your consistent presence, she doesn't have to constantly guess where she stands. She doesn't have to walk on eggshells, wondering what version of you will show up that day. Consistency builds emotional rhythm, and in that rhythm, trust begins to grow. Trust isn't built in the big moments. It's built in the small, repeated ones. The texts you send without being reminded, the way you follow through on your promises, the softness in your voice when she's having a hard day. Women crave this stability not because they're fragile, but because it allows them to put their energy into connection rather than self-protection. When presence becomes a habit, not a performance, she relaxes into the relationship. She stops overanalyzing silence. She stops wondering if she's too much or not enough, because presence, when it's real, doesn't flinch under pressure, and consistency, when it's genuine, creates a foundation where emotional safety can thrive. It's not about being perfect, it's about being reliable in your energy. It's about showing up the same way, especially when life isn't easy. It's the kind of emotional investment that says, I'm here, not just when it's convenient, but when it actually counts. Emotional attunement is the quiet, often invisible art of truly sensing what someone is feeling beneath their words, behind their silence, in the subtleties of their body language and tone. For a woman, being emotionally attuned to means being met on her emotional wavelength without needing to constantly explain herself or translate her emotions into something easier for someone else to handle. It's when someone can feel the shift in her mood and gently ask what's really going on without pressuring her to talk before she's ready. It's when someone doesn't just respond to her tears with logic, but recognizes that what she needs in that moment is understanding, warmth, and presence. Attunement is not about fixing her emotions or trying to manage them. It's about being with her in them. It's sensing when she's holding something back, not because she's playing games, but because she's protecting a part of herself that feels too tender to expose. When a woman experiences emotional attunement, she feels recognized, not reduced. She feels like her inner world matters to someone, that her emotions aren't too complicated or too exhausting. She doesn't have to perform or pretend because someone is paying attention not just to what she says, but to what she means. Emotional attunement requires sensitivity, patience, and a willingness to be emotionally vulnerable too. It means asking the deeper questions, staying present through the pauses, and not taking her emotions personally. It's reading between the lines without assuming you know everything. It's being curious rather than reactive. When a woman is emotionally attuned to, she begins to soften, not because she's been convinced, but because she feels safe enough to open. She starts to trust that she doesn't have to be hypervigilant or silencing to be understood, and accepted women don't want to be rescued or saved from their emotions, their lives, or their choices. They want to be respected in the fullness of who they are. Respect isn't about pedestal, placing, or idolizing an ideal version of her. It's about honoring the reality of her complexity. It's recognizing her strength without expecting her to carry everything alone, and appreciating her softness without assuming she is weak. She doesn't crave admiration for the curated parts of her identity, but rather deep reverence for the parts she often hides, the doubts, the contradictions, the evolving truths. Being respected means being taken seriously when she speaks, even when her voice shakes. It means her opinions are considered without being dismissed, interrupted, or talked over. It's the small things: being heard in a conversation, being included in a decision, being supported in her ambition without guilt or competition. Respect is also about boundaries, seeing them, honoring them, not pushing against them for the sake of convenience or ego. It's valuing her time, her energy, her space, and not just when it serves a purpose. It's being able to stand beside her as an equal, not in front of her as a savior or behind her as a shadow. She doesn't want to be someone's project, someone's escape, or someone's proof of worth. She wants to be met where she is, fully, with her autonomy intact. Emotional respect means allowing her to feel what she feels without trying to edit, mute, or rush her through it. It's trusting her internal compass, even when you don't fully understand it. It's seeing her as whole, not something to fix or complete. When a woman is respected in this way, she stops questioning her value and starts expressing her truth without apology or hesitation.